question. This war that is about to engulf the world will be one of the most destructive, if not the most destructive, in human history and could lead to thermonuclear war. Please warn everyone you know. World War III is now upon us. Ask yourselves, what are you doing in this time of great challenge? What are you doing to unlock minds? Go to Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.tv for the latest headlines and cutting-edge information.
That is Alex Jones on Obama starting World War III. Extremely disturbing stuff. You can see that at the Alex Jones channel, youtube.com/the Alex Jones channel. And, of course, that's going to go out also in the InfoWars Insider newsletter. We're going to be back after that to break it down. And then coming up, Paul Joseph Watson. Later in the broadcast, Bob Chapman. Stay tuned. This is a day long remembered. We're back again on the Alex Jones Show. I'm Aaron Dykes sitting in again while Alex is away on assignment. But we've just watched his video, Obama launching World War III, and unfortunately, it hits all the right notes. They are drawing the Middle East into the fan of flames. They're, drawing in all the powers. What is a world war? It's where everyone's so entangled they can't avoid what's going on. Obviously, that makes sense for the Middle East region, starting with the Arab Springs a few months back, and Egypt and Tunisia, drawing in Libya, now Syria on the cusp of being drawn into war, bombings now in Yemen, tensions escalating in Pakistan, drone killings, civilians, supposed acts of Al-Qaeda going on, still a presence in Iraq and Afghanistan. When will we ever leave there? It's just really disturbing how they're intentionally trying to escalate this stuff. Not only the reports, as we published earlier in the week, on the 15th of June, the U.S. invasion of Libya set for October. That's based directly on military personnel and troops calling in to warn us that they've heard word, whether official or otherwise, that we're going to be sending in big-time troops and really heading for a hot war in Libya. That despite the fact that Congress is trying to hold President Obama accountable for extending past the 60 days war power. Obama's been very indignant, said it's not necessary, said the level of hostilities don't justify congressional approval for a war, another war that America's been drawn into and that is only getting hotter and hotter. Further, we've always known that if things go to Iran, that it will most likely draw in both Russia and China, possibly creating that World War III scenario. But as we heard the other day from Dr. Webster Tarpley, it may not even take Iran. Sure, they want to get to Iran. They've asked themselves in public papers, what path to Persia? A new approach for Iran was the document from outgoing Secretary of Defense Robert Gates and Zbigniew Brzezinski, one of our shadow overlords. And even if they don't get to Iran anytime soon, Libya may be enough for Russia and China to be drawn into a world war. It would be incredibly just disastrous. Meanwhile, we have Robert Gates last week, coincidentally, during the Bilderberg conferences, warning NATO, warning Europe that they're not the allies they used to be unless they up their spending of defense. Robert Gates rebukes European allies in farewell speech, Washington Post. And this was from June 10th, the first day of the Bilderberg conference, or the second rather. Defense Secretary Robert M. Gates rebuked some of America's staunchest allies Friday, saying the United States has a dwindling appetite to serve as the heavyweight partner in the military order that has underpinned the U.S. relationship with Europe since the end of World War II. In an unusually stinging speech made on his valedictory visit to Europe before he retires at the end of the month, Gates condemned European defense cuts and said the U.S. is tired of engaging in combat missions for those who don't want to share the risks and cost. Even Robert Gates, who won't back this new war, is really telling the European allies that they need to step it up. There's been reports that NATO has already been running out of ammunition. And, of course, this speech was given elsewhere in Europe, but we did have inside intel telling us that Robert Gates was among those attending the Bilderberg conference, not on the official members list, in violation of the Logan Act that prevents U.S. officials from meeting behind closed doors with foreign officials without the knowledge of Congress. And yet here he is meeting not directly inside the Suvretta Hotel in St. Moritz, but with a lot of the important Bilderberg members in Europe, and really giving them one of those coded messages for the inner elite, not really generally for public consumption. And then by the same token, we have really alarming points here as Leon Panetta is about to come in from CIA director into Secretary of Defense position as they heat up Libya, as Syria looks like it's probably the next hot area there in the Middle East. This article by John Galt from yesterday, Living in the Shadows, A World of Black Ops and Cyber Wars, all about how Leon Panetta, the exiting CIA director, openly admitted that shadow wars and black ops should be a strategy basically more often imposed. But that is something we're going to get more into on the other side. Paul Joseph Watson's going to join me. And coming up, we're going to get into some of the behind-the-scenes stories from Bilderberg. And more importantly, we're going to show how their agenda has nexus with this Arab Spring and the looming hot World War III crisis. On the other side, Infowars.com. I'm Aaron Dykes. You want to check out the YouTube channel, too, the Alex Jones channel. We're back again on this Friday, June 17th. Things are unfortunately just heating up for World War III. I've just begun to try to slip into the destabilization campaign aimed for the Mideast region as the powers that be look like they're attempting to draw China and Russia into the conflict. Obviously, they've had their eyes on Iran for years and years. Syria may now be drawn into conflict. I wish I was more articulate because this is really the day before the big crisis. What was it like before World War I and World War II, which they provocateured also? Just untold death and untold harm. I really hope this doesn't happen again, but they probably actually don't want a World War III that looks like a hot World War III with a big label. They've always been pitching these wars on the humanitarian crisis. So much of the Arab Spring that we've been tracking for months and months now really has been under the guise of open democracy, of breaking through these dictator regimes. And sure, there's a lot of bad regimes in the Middle East, but I don't think our sabotage here in the United States is really going to help matters. Just one of those articles, the New York Times from April 14th, U.S. groups help nurture Arab uprisings. And I really think it gets back to an article from 2007. We have Paul Watson joining me in just a moment. But remember revolution, flash mobs, and brain chips, a grim vision of the future? It ostensibly on the surface was something aimed for 2035, but why wait? Why not just craft the revolution, make it seem like high-tech online groups, the Twitter revolution, the Facebook revolutions? Why not make it seem like that's where it's all coming from when it's really U.S.-backed? It's just interesting, coming from Bilderberg this week, how many of the high-tech moguls were meeting inside of Bilderberg and how many of them had very important roles in the Mideast crises. One of them is Google's Eric Schmidt. He was there at Bilderberg this year, and one of his executives basically started the protest in Egypt. He said he was very proud of them. Let's go now to Paul Watson. Do we have him? Hi, Paul. Thanks for joining me. It was great to see you in St. Moritz, Switzerland. What do you see happening as World War III looms? How much of this came through the Bilderberg agenda, Paul?
Good to be on the air, Aaron. Yeah, basically one of the first things that came out of the Bilderberg conference through Jim Tucker's sources was this fact that the globalists were petrified at the building resistance within Congress to the expansion, the intensification of this bombardment of Libya. And, of course, days later we got this information out of Fort Hood saying that the full-scale ground invasion is basically set for October. Yesterday you had Kucinich and Ron Paul file this federal lawsuit which goes after Obama for violating the War Powers Act. So, again, in both these instances, this leaked information that Bilderberg were planning to intensify this war in the Middle East and North Africa is already coming to fruition within days of the Bilderberg conference ending. So it proves once again that these power brokers don't get together to, merely play tiddlywinks, as many of the mainstream media will have us believe. But the fact that Libya is merely one outpost of this Middle Eastern war that the globalists want to inflame the entire region is proven by the fact that what you were just talking about. Now they're talking about Syria. Of course, we had information come out right at the end of the Bilderberg conference, at the tail end of the summit, that Bilderberg would make its agenda on Syria known in the coming days and weeks, and that's precisely what we saw happen on Tuesday. We had reports that the USS Batan Amphibia Air Carrier strike vessel, 2,000 Marines, 6 warplanes, 15 attack helicopters, was being moved to a location just off the Syrian coast in preparation for another humanitarian military intervention under the justification of helping the protesters. Up to 1,000 apparently have been killed by police. About 300 police and military have been killed in the conflict. So now we're including Syria into the equation. Of course, similar brutality is occurring in both Bahrain and Saudi Arabia, but because those guys are in the New World Order club, we're not hearing about any kind of humanitarian intervention there for the time being.
It's war is peace, Paul, but I just want to, of course, I want to stick with the geopolitics, but I just want to point out, this isn't my first Bilderberg meeting to observe, and I've learned that the agenda they say, you're going to see leaks of it in the days immediately following the agenda. And we've seen that with Libya, we've seen that with Syria, and we've especially seen that with this cyber agenda and the false flag cyber attack they look like they're setting up, Paul.
Well, yeah, you've got more hack attacks on the World Bank, the CIA. And isn't it interesting that the fact that we got over 3 million views on Justin TV with our live coverage of Bilderberg using an iPhone 4 streaming live video, and then just days after the event, at which all these tech moguls are attending, they come out with this new Apple patent which says that they're going to block via infrared sensors people filming live events. Now, initially that's going to be concerts. Also, if you read the patent, it says museums are going to block it and embed their own watermark on it. But this is another tool with which to strangle the alternative media. This is going to be used to block police confrontations. It's going to be used to block people filming protests and political events. So all manner of subjects that Bilderberg were talking about and that they were looking to pursue and push through come out in the days, does it take weeks, does it take months, in the very days after the conference, once again debunking the myth that they have no influence over world events.
Well, give me a break, Paul. It not only is that they want to cut down on protesters being able to cover the events, but they also want to pursue this antitrust law agenda. They've got very important people from both the U.S. and the EU Commission on this year's member list I can get to in a minute. They not only want to be able to block what the U.S. can do, but they simultaneously, contradictorily, hypocritically want to, quote, bankroll shadow internet for dissidents abroad. I've got this out of the AFP from June 12th, only a few days ago. During the conference, the government is financing the development of shadow internet systems to enable dissidents abroad to get around government censors. So they're going to enable these people in the dictator countries while they clamp down and make our own countries greater dictatorships, Paul.
Well, that's right. Of course, it all comes from this Cass Sunstein cognitive infiltration document, which was put out by the Harvard professor Sunstein a year before Obama came to office. Now, of course, he's Obama's information czar, and it's all about infiltrating, shutting down, quote, conspiracy theories, which, of course, is anything that differs from the official version of events. So that's where it all stems from. Even in the Bush era in 2006, they said that the new war was against, quote, conspiracy theorists on the internet. So this isn't a recent thing. This stretches back at least 5 or 6 years that they plan to use the internet against us, firstly to ferret us out and find out who the quote extremists are,